Ezekiel 19 for Bible study. Take up a lament concerning the princes of Israel and say, what a lioness was your mother among the lions. She lay down among them and reared her cubs. She brought up one of her cubs, and he became a strong lion. He learned to tear the prey, and he became a man-eater. The nations heard about him, and he was trapped in their pit. They led him with hooks to the land of Egypt. When she saw her hope unfulfilled, her expectation gone, she took another of her cubs and made him a strong lion. He prowled among the lions, for he was now a strong lion. He learned to tear the prey, and he became a man-eater. He broke down their strongholds and devastated their towns. The land and all who were in it were terrified by his roaring. Then the nations came against him, those from regions round about. They spread their net for him, and he was trapped in their pit. With hooks they pulled him into a cage and brought him to the king of Babylon. They put him in prison, so his roar was heard no longer on the mountains of Israel. Your mother was like a vine in your vineyard, planted by the water. It was fruitful and full of branches because of abundant water. Its branches were strong, fit for a ruler's scepter. It towered high above the thick foliage, conspicuous for its height and for its many branches, but it was uprooted in fury and thrown to the ground. The east wind made it shrivel. It was stripped of its fruit. Its strong branches withered, and fire consumed them. Now it is planted in the desert, in a dry and thirsty land. Fire spread from one of its main branches and consumed its fruit. No strong branch is left on it, fit for a ruler's scepter. This is a lament and is to be used as a lament. Okay, do you remember that one of the faces on the creatures, the living creatures or the cherubim, was a lion? And we talked about the lion seizing its prey and the perseverance of the lion. Now I want you to listen to the perseverance of the lion. He was raised by his mother. The mother is Zion. Zion has been described as a mother. Remember in Revelation 12 when you saw that Zion was in labor and was giving birth to her children? And that's kind of what you're seeing right here is that symbolism of Revelation 12. She brought up one of her cubs and he became a strong lion. He learned to tear the prey and become a man-eater. That's the job of a lion. Don't get tripped up on that being somehow wrong or something. That's the job of a lion. That's what they do. The nations heard about him, and he was trapped in their pit. They led him with hooks to the land of Egypt. Okay, in Revelation, you also saw that the place that the witnesses are going to die is called what? Figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was killed. Okay, when she saw her hope unfulfilled, again, talking about Zion, the church. When she saw her hope unfulfilled, her expectation gone, she took another one of her cubs and made him a strong lion. He prowled among the lions, for he was now a strong lion. He learned to tear the prey, and he became a man-eater. He broke down their strongholds and devastated their towns. The land and all who were in it were terrified by his roaring. Then the nations came against him, those from regions round about. They spread their net for him, and he was trapped in their pit. With hooks they pulled him into a cage and brought him to the king of Babylon. They put him in prison, so his roar was heard no longer on the mountains of Israel. Again, what is the character that's being represented here? What is the Spirit of God that's being represented here? This lion is bold. It's doing what it came to do. The nations are hearing about this lion and what he's doing. They're terrified of this lion. It kind of reminds me of when the king of the north loses heart in Daniel 11. When he loses heart because of the reports that are being made in the east and the west, the reports that he's hearing back from these lions, from these witnesses about the end being here, about his time being short. Now, you know that these lions are good. First of all, you know because his mother is good and has reared him strong. You also know because those who have historically been terrible and represented as evil, such as Egypt and Babylon, are those who are imprisoning him. Well, who do you think that this is talking about? In Revelation 12, the two things that are required in order to triumph over the devil are the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony of the witnesses who did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. So we should be pretty clear about who this is. Jesus, and then his witnesses. Now here is the vineyard. Here is the multitude in white robes. Your mother was like a vine in your vineyard, planted by the water. It was fruitful and full of branches because of abundant water. Its branches were strong, fit for a ruler's scepter. It towered high above the thick foliage, conspicuous for its height and for its many branches. He is the vine, you are the branches. But it was uprooted in fury and thrown into the ground. The east wind made it shrivel. It was stripped of its fruit. Its strong branches withered and fire consumed them. Now it is planted in the desert in a dry and thirsty land. Fire spread from one of its main branches and consumed its fruit. No strong branch is left on it, fit for a ruler's scepter. This is a lament and is to be used as a lament. Now, I'm understanding that this is referring to the multitude in white robes here. And I know that it's a little confusing because why is it uprooted in a fury and thrown to the ground? The east wind made it shrivel. It was stripped of its fruit. The strong branches withered and fire consumed them. Now it's planted in the desert in a dry and thirsty land. Fire spread from one of its main branches and consumed its fruit. No strong branches left on it, fit for a ruler's scepter. Well, Daniel talks about, or Gabriel, when he's talking to Daniel, says, when Daniel says, well, what's going to become of it? What's going to become? And Gabriel says, roll up the scroll. The wise are going to understand, but the wicked will not. And he says something very interesting. He tells Daniel that these things are going to continue until the power of God's holy people has been broken. And I believe that it's right. This is a lament. The reason this is a lament is because God doesn't want to do this to his people. It's not as though he would have wanted to bring grief on his people, but it was necessary in order for them to get into position to understand what they've been given. And I'm going to tell you right now that my work in the last year with people who claim to be in God, my observation on this channel is that many of you, most of you, still think that this covenant is owed to you. You don't seem to understand what's required of you in this covenant because you're not showing up. I mean, I'm not a dummy. I can see the fruit. I can see why people would need to be brought low. I can see when someone tells me, well, I'm not going to come anymore until I'm ready to put God first. Oh, okay. When do you think that might be? I can see very clearly what's going on in the church that claims to be in him. So yeah, he's going to bring that grief. And what this reminds me of, your mother was like a vine in your vineyard, is God's song of the vineyard. So let's go ahead and read that. Isaiah 5. I will sing for the one I love, a song about his vineyard. My loved one had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vines. He built a watchtower in it and cut out a winepress as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it yielded only bad fruit. Now you dwellers in Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done for my vineyard than I have done for it? When I looked for good grapes, why did it yield only bad? Now I will tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge, and it will be destroyed. I will break down its wall, and it will be trampled. I will make it a wasteland, neither pruned nor cultivated, and briars and thorns will grow there. I will command the clouds not to rain on it. Is this sounding a little familiar? It'll be uprooted and planted in the desert, thirsting. And then if you remember in Revelation, that he says, no longer will they thirst, no longer will they hunger, no longer will they be scorched by the sun. The implication is they were thirsty and they were scorched by the sun. The power of God's holy people is going to be broken. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty and the nation of Israel and the people of Judah are the vines he delighted in. And he looked for justice, but saw bloodshed, for righteousness, but heard cries of distress. So you see, the book of Ezekiel and the patterns that have been laid out are totally consistent with the rest of Scripture. And it was good that we started out with the book of Revelation to demystify some things and to just get clear on what are we looking at in these end times. And now that we've been reading the book of Ezekiel, we can see direct parallels between Ezekiel and the book of Revelation. And you're going to see that in all of the books. You're going to see that in Daniel and Isaiah, in Jeremiah. God has been consistent through and through. He might use different parables to help you to understand a different aspect or a different layer of what he's showing you, but it's all consistent, isn't it? In Revelation, you saw Zion, the mother, giving birth to her children. Here, you're seeing the mother of the lioness, who is the mother, and you're also seeing the mother of the vineyard, or the mother vine in the vineyard. All of that symbolism is consistent. Chapter 20. In the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th day, some of the elders of Israel came to inquire of the Lord, and they sat down in front of me. Then the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Have you come to inquire of me? As surely as I live, I will not let you inquire of me, declares the sovereign Lord. Will you judge them? Will you judge them, Son of man? Then confront them with the detestable practices of their ancestors and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day I chose Israel, I swore with uplifted hand to the descendants of Jacob and revealed myself to them in Egypt. With uplifted hand, I said to them, I am the Lord your God. On that day, I swore to them that I would bring them out of Egypt into a land I had searched out for them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful of all lands. And I said to them, each of you get rid of the vile images you have set your eyes on, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. But they rebelled against me and would not listen to me. They did not get rid of the vile images they had set their eyes on, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them and spend my anger against them in Egypt. But for the sake of my name, I brought them out of Egypt. I did it to keep my name from being profaned in the eyes of the nations among whom they lived, and in whose sight I had revealed myself to the Israelites. Therefore I led them out of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness. I gave them my decrees and made known to them my laws, by which the person who obeys them will live. Also I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between us, a sign between us. If you're not obeying Sabbath, you're not assembling on Sabbath, you don't have a sign. Actually, there is a sign. That's a sign that you're not in the covenant. I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between us so that they would know that I, the Lord, made them holy. Yet the people of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not follow my decrees, but rejected my laws, by which the person who obeys them will live. And they utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them and destroy them in the wilderness. But for the sake of my name, I did what would keep it from being profaned in the eyes of the nations, in whose sight I had brought them out. Also, with uplifted hand, I swore to them in the wilderness that I would not bring them into the land I had given them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful of all lands, because they rejected my laws and did not follow my decrees and desecrated my Sabbaths, for their hearts were devoted to their idols. Yet I looked on them with pity and did not destroy them or put an end to them in the wilderness. I said to their children in the wilderness, do not follow the statutes of your parents or keep their laws or defile yourselves with their idols. I am the Lord your God. Follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Keep my Sabbaths holy, that they may be a sign between us. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. But the children rebelled against me. They did not follow my decrees. They were not careful to keep my laws, of which I said, the person who obeys them will live by them. And they desecrated my Sabbaths. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them and spend my anger against them in the wilderness. But I withheld my hand, and for the sake of my name, I did what would keep it from being profaned in the eyes of the nations, in whose sight I had brought them out. Also with uplifted hand I swore to them in the wilderness that I would disperse them among the nations and scatter them through the countries, because they had not obeyed my laws, but had rejected my decrees and desecrated my Sabbaths, and their eyes lusted after their parents' idols. So I gave them other statutes that were not good, and laws through which they could not live. I defiled them through their gifts, the sacrifice of every firstborn, that I might fill them with horror, so they would know that I am the Lord. Therefore, Son of man, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In this also your ancestors blasphemed me by being unfaithful to me. When I brought them into the land I had sworn to give them, and they saw any high hill or any leafy tree, there they offered their sacrifices, made offerings that aroused my anger, presented their fragrant incense, and poured out their drink offerings. Then I said to them, what is this high place you go to? It's called Bama to this day. Therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Will you defile yourselves the way your ancestors did and lust after their vile images? When you offer your gifts, the sacrifice of your children in the fire, you continue to defile yourselves with all your idols to this day. Am I to let you inquire of me, you Israelites? As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will not let you inquire of me. You say we want to be like the nations, like the people of the world who serve wood and stone. You hear this? You say we want to be like the nations. We want to be like the world, like the people of the world who serve wood and stone. But what you have in mind will never happen. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will reign over you with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with outpoured wrath. I will bring you from the nations and gather you from the countries where you have been scattered. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with outpoured wrath, I will bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there, face to face, I will execute judgment on you. As I judged your ancestors in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will judge you, declares the sovereign Lord. I will take note of you as you pass under my rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge you of those who revolt and rebel against me. Okay. I will purge you of those who revolt and rebel against me. So what does that mean? It means I will separate the weeds that are in your group, that are in this bundle of wheat. I will purge you of the wolves, right? I will purge you of those who revolt and rebel against me. Although I will bring them out of the land where they are living, yet they will not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am the Lord. As for you, people of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Go and serve your idols, every one of you. But afterward, you will surely listen to me and no longer profane my holy name with your gifts and idols. For on my holy mountain, the high mountain of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord, there in the land, all the people of Israel will serve me, and there I will accept them. There I will require your offerings and your choice gifts, along with all your holy sacrifices. I will accept you as fragrant incense when I bring you out from the nations and gather you from the countries where you have been scattered. And I will be proved holy through you in the sight of the nations. Then you will know that I am the Lord when I bring you into the land of Israel, the land I had sworn with uplifted hand to give your ancestors. There you will remember your conduct and all the actions by which you have defiled yourselves, and you will loathe yourselves for all the evil you've done. You will know that I am the Lord when I deal with you for my name's sake, and not according to your evil ways and your corrupt practices, you people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face toward the south. Preach against the south and prophesy against the forest of the southland. Say to the southern forest, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am about to set fire to you, and it will consume all your trees, both green and dry. The blazing flame will not be quenched, and every face from south to north will be scorched by it. Everyone will see that I, the Lord, have kindled it. It will not be quenched. Then I said, Sovereign Lord, they are saying of me, isn't he just telling parables? Ezekiel 21, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Jerusalem and preach against the sanctuary. Prophesy against the land of Israel and say to her, this is what the Lord says, I'm against you. I will draw my sword from its sheath and cut off from you both the righteous and the wicked, because I'm going to cut off the righteous and the wicked. Do you hear this, guys? The righteous and the wicked, because a lot of times you get it in your head that he's not bringing judgment against his people, but he most definitely is. You will experience judgment. You will be brought into that position. Whatever righteousness you think you have right now, God knows better. Because I'm going to cut off the righteous and the wicked. My sword will be unsheathed against everyone from south to north. Then all people will know that I, the Lord, have drawn my sword from its sheath. It will not return again. Therefore groan, Son of man. Groan before them with broken heart and bitter grief. And when they ask you, why are you groaning? You shall say, because of the news that is coming. Every heart will melt with fear, and every hand will go limp. Every spirit will become faint, and every leg be wet with urine. It is coming. It will surely take place, declares the sovereign Lord. What am I saying to you? What am I saying to you today? These are the things that are coming in 2.5 years. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy and say, this is what the Lord says. A sword, sharpened and polished, sharpened for the slaughter, polished to flash like lightning, Shall we rejoice in the scepter of my royal son? The sword despises every such stick. The sword is appointed to be polished, to be grasped with the hand. It is sharpened and polished, made ready for the hand of the slayer. Cry out and wail, son of man, for it is against my people, against my people. It is against all the princes of Israel. They are thrown to the sword along with my people. Therefore, beat your breast. Testing will surely come. Okay, same language being used in what? Revelation 3, when he's talking to the church in Philadelphia, that he's going to spare the two lampstands, the witnesses. He's going to spare them from the hour of trial and testing that he's going to bring on the entire earth. Want to know why people will be there? Because they're not responding to the testing now. They think they can do things like take a little longer to submit to him, take off when they feel upset with his servants. They think they can just do whatever they want. They got all the time in the world, and God's going to cover the margin of error. Therefore, let's make the margin of error a little bigger. Why don't we? I don't think so. God's going to bring you to the wall. You will prove yourself. Testing will surely come. And what if even the scepter, which the sword despises, does not continue, declares the sovereign Lord? So then, son of man, prophesy and strike your hands together. Let the sword strike twice, even 3 times. It is a sword for slaughter, a sword for great slaughter, closing in on them from every side, so that hearts may melt with fear, and the fallen may be many. I have stationed the sword for slaughter at all their gates. Look, it is forged to strike like lightning. It is grasped for slaughter. Slash to the right, you sword, then to the left. Wherever your blade is turned, I too will strike my hands together, and my wrath will subside. I, the Lord, have spoken. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, mark out 2 roads for the sword of the king of Babylon to take, both starting from the same country. Make a signpost where the road branches off to the city. Mark out 1 road for the sword to come against Rabbah of the Ammonites, and another against Judah, and fortified Jerusalem. For the king of Babylon will stop at the fork in the road, at the junction of the 2 roads, to seek an omen. He will cast lots with arrows. He will consult his idols. He will examine the liver. Into his right hand will come the lot for Jerusalem, where he is to set up battering rams, to give the command to slaughter, to sound the battle cry, to set battering rams against the gates, to build a ramp, and to erect siege works. It will seem like a false omen to those who have sworn allegiance to him, but he will remind them of their guilt and take them captive. It seems like what's being said here is that it will seem like a false omen to those who have sworn allegiance to him. So they're not really going to believe him or take him seriously, but he will remind them of their guilt and take them captive. Basically, they're in bondage to him. They've sold themselves to this king of Babylon. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: because you people have brought your mind to mind your guilt by your open rebellion, revealing your sins in all that you do, because you have done this, you will be taken captive. You profane and wicked prince of Israel, whose day has come, whose time of punishment has reached its climax. This is what the sovereign Lord says: take off the turban, remove the crown. It will not be as it was. The lowly will be exalted, and exalted will be brought low. A ruin, I will make it a ruin. The crown will not be restored until he to whom it rightfully belongs shall come. To him I will give it. And you, son of man, prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says about the Ammonites and their insults. A sword, drawn for the slaughter, polished to consume, and to flash like lightning. Despite false visions concerning you and lying divinations about you, it will be laid on the necks of the wicked who are to be slain, whose day has come, whose time of punishment has reached its climax. Let the sword return to its sheath. In the place where you were created, in the land of your ancestry, I will judge you. I will pour out my wrath on you and breathe out my fiery anger against you. I will deliver you into the hands of brutal men skilled in destruction. You will be fuel for the fire. Your blood will be shed in your land. You will be remembered no more, for I, the Lord, have spoken. So what I see here is that the things that are going to be committed by Babylon is that testing, and that is consistent with what we have seen. The things that are going to be committed by the Antichrist, That is judgment on God's people. It is a time of testing to see, because, listen, if you are seeing this, that people are dilly-dallying and thinking that they got all the time in the world, it's not the end times, but God will forgive us. That's what Jesus came here for. And you're misunderstanding, or you see other people misunderstanding and taking for granted what Christ has done, then it should not surprise you that God would bring an hour of testing on the whole world to see if, when he brings them into position, they'll finally make that decision and they'll live it out even unto death. Because the bottom line is, I think that a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm not ready to give up my Easter, not ready to give up my Christmas, not ready to make him first in my life. I'm not willing to do the things that I'm being called into right now. What you are doing inherently is choosing the world. You're not choosing Christ. You're deceiving yourself into thinking that you're in him. You're not. You're not in him if that's how you're living. You're not in him if that's what your heart is. And because you've deceived yourself, you're going to have to be brought into this position. You're going to have to be tested to prove worthy of him. And don't say for a second that, oh, that's a lie because, grace is unmerited. God's unmerited favor. Where does it say that in the Bible? That sounds like a human construct. You couldn't have deserved it, but that doesn't mean that your covenant exempts you from responsibility. No one would believe that definition if they had read the whole Bible and everything that Jesus preached when he was here, that it's hard for the righteous to be saved. It's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Tell me, how does that fit with that lie, that counterfeit salvation, that counterfeit covenant? You tell me, how does that fit? It doesn't. It doesn't fit with the rest of the pieces of the puzzle. You do have to prove yourself worthy. And for that reason, Jesus says things like, those who put their hand to the plow and look back are not worthy of me, are not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Oh, so you have to be fit for the kingdom of heaven, and you got to be worthy of him. You are going to have to come out of counterfeit Christianity. You're going to have to come out of Babylon by Babylon coming out of you. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. You need to understand your covenant for what it truly is, because no other gospel is going to save. Please discern this message with God.